So we've all heard about 5G and the promise that 5G brings. When you think about Internet of Things, when you think about self-driving cars, for example, the speed at which we communicate and the speed of 5G is like 10 times higher in many cases than what we currently have. So there's no doubt about 5G and the future of 5G and how it's going to be amongst us in a very short time. So one of the companies that's at the forefront of 5G, developing the technologies, the handsets, the hardware, is none other than Huawei. And we're joined today by Akhram Mohamed, who's the Chief Technology Officer of Huawei Consumer Business Group in South Africa. Akhram, it's great to see you. How are you firstly, and how is the lockdown treating you?
Hey, Aki. Firstly, thanks for having me on the show. It's incredible seeing you again after such a long time. And yeah, I think the lockdown has been a bit harsh in the beginning, but we're kind of getting used to it, right? And I think for all South Africans, it's the new normal, and we tend to adapt. And we're adapting pretty well. So it's been 4 months that I'm at home working remotely, but I'm definitely missing the office and trying to get back into the whole office vibe. So that's why this background that you see behind me here. But yeah, good to see you. And how you doing?
I've been doing same as you remotely. I was going to say, very nice office you have, but anyway. So, I mean, if you look at the lockdown, I mean, really the technology that's around us has enabled a lot of us to communicate. Like if this had happened 10 years ago, I think it would have been a very different picture. And your company, Huawei, is one of the leaders in technology, one of the first companies to start rolling out 5G globally. You've got the handset devices, you've got the technology that transmits the 5G, you've got the modems, etc. What does this mean for South Africans, and what are the benefits of 5G for consumers like you and I right now that are working from home?
Yeah, okay. I think, there's so much being said about 5G, and you're absolutely right. We need to get to the root of it to see what is the real benefit to consumers and society in general. I think there's been so much talk about 5G and new technologies that a lot of it has been covered by hype. And people, consumers, or the general man in the street is really talking about and saying, is this for me? Should we be focusing so much of investment on this technology that's going to bring self-driving vehicles? In a society like South Africa, which we know is so unequal that a lot of our people don't have access to fresh water and sanitation, perhaps, where are the priorities? So I think perhaps 5G shouldn't be looked at in isolation. So yes, Huawei is a world leader in 5G and the number one telecommunications provider in the world. But at the same time, we're a world leader in AI. We are a world leader in computing, in cloud infrastructure. And when you bring all of these together, these different technologies that can complement each other, that's when you start to see real use cases and worldwide application of these scenarios. So in our context of South Africa, to move forward, when we look at health services, I mean, this pandemic has given us quite a bit of a wake-up call. The most vulnerable in society lacks access to technology or services. So telemedicine is one thing I can think of. Online education, when we're looking at perhaps public transportation systems, we're looking at agriculture and how 5G along with other tech can be able to improve this. That's when you say it's a great use case. It's something that can make a difference. And then access to these technologies is extremely important, because that's another problem with South Africa and perhaps Africa in general compared to the rest of the world. Is if you look at fixed broadband as an example, it's incredible. The speeds are great. We know what kind of performance we're able to get from it, but the cost barrier is one. If we look at the coverage right now, the remotest of areas in South Africa, you look at our townships, don't have access to fiber, and it's very, very expensive. So there's a barrier to entry. 5G being very mobile, and if we look at fixed wireless solutions or complete mobile solutions via handsets, it's easier to roll out and it's easier to get it into people's hands. And this is what Huawei is looking at doing. Even with the likes of the P40 Lite that we just announced, the 5G version, it will be the most affordable 5G device in South Africa.
Wow.
And the network operators are going along the same direction. If we just, Aki, if we just look at what happened over the pandemic and why I'm bringing these kind of cases up specifically, is we have good intentions as a society, perhaps as government, when we rolled out the field hospitals, the ones in Gauteng and in the Eastern Cape. The intention was good. We're going to take care of those that cannot get access or the hospitals are too full. But right now, they're sort of white elephants. You've got maybe 40% or 30% occupation rates.
Yes.
The reason is not because the facility is not good enough, We don't have enough PPE. We don't have enough ventilators. We don't have enough doctors to be able to take care of the patients coming in. So what's the point of that? When it comes to 5G, we can be able to do virtual consultations, as an example. We
Yeah.
can do virtual interventions, so that's when you see technology really being applied in real world scenarios. And that's what we need. If we don't have those kinds of processes implemented now, I think the future is going to look very bleak. So where we are currently in the 5G, in my opinion, is not yet at the self-driving vehicles. That will come. But the
Yes.
priorities is to enable and connect people with 5G technology or connectivity in general,
Yeah.
perhaps even 4G. Because once they are connected, then you start seeing society, economies start being improved. We remove people from poverty, and then we move on from there and build on it. But we need the foundation.
And this has been proven over and over that, the broadband penetration, when you connect people, it unlocks incredible economic value, as you've just said. But, the success of 5G is not just going to be hinged on the networks rolling out their towers. It's going to be on the affordability of the handsets. You just touched on the P40 Lite, which is a 5G device. I've been testing 5G on the local networks on a trial basis as well, with a P40 actually, and the speeds have been quite astonishing. So, the P40 Lite is what you would classify a mid-tier device, right? But it's at an affordable price point. The 5G accessibility in your devices, you're hoping to unlock a lot more value for consumers and make it more affordable to access 5G, because it's here and it's just going to grow from here, right?
Totally. And I think that this is the whole point of launching the P40 Lite 5G version. You look at what happens in the industry, because, when you're trying to look at profits, and especially a new technology like 5G,
Mm.
you're really only able to roll out more affordable options when you reach scale.
Yes.
Huawei, we've taken a slightly different view of this, and we said, well, the most popular devices in our segment is the P series. We've got quite a bit of equity. And then especially the Lite series. So when we launched P40 Pro and P40, those came in as standard with 5G. But every other manufacturer, every other OEM is doing that with their flagships. So we launched the standard P40 Lite, and now in August we have launched the P40 Lite 5G version, which is being able to break that price band that people are looking at from a flagship or the entry point.
Yes.
And we are partnering with the likes of Vodacom and the other network providers to say, what kind of packages and 5G offerings can we be able to provide and offer to South Africans, especially now that people are working from home. We are looking at e-learning being increased quite substantially, streaming services, and everything else that people need. How can we empower them and put 5G in more people's hands? And I think that's going to be really, really important for the next couple of months and the years going ahead.
Akhram, is it quite an expensive component to add into a phone? I mean, I imagine that, with scale, obviously it's going to become mainstream and standard in the few years' time. But to add that 5G radio, whatever you want to call it, technology in the phone, is it an expensive addition to a phone?
I think initially it's quite expensive, and
Okay.
that's because of the IPs and the R&D that goes into it. And you
Right.
have not really, made back the numbers in terms of the volumes because of, it's brand new.
Yeah.
So it is quite expensive, but how we've managed to limit the cost is through Huawei's high silicon arm. We have created a 5G SoC that's part of the actual CPU itself.
Uh-huh.
So it's combined, it's one chipset, whereas the other OEMs are going for separate modems as well as the CPU. So this gives us an added advantage. The fact that High Silicon is a subsidiary of Huawei also assists us to be able to reduce the costing.
Okay.
And we have taken a strategic decision that 5G being a new technology and we being a global leader in it, the importance of and the value that it offers to society in general, that we weren't looking at the profitability aspect. So we were able to provide those things quite affordable. But most certainly, the fact that we can do it in a mid-tier device now, the
Yeah.
ultimate goal is within a year, we must be able to provide it in entry-level products.
Yes.
And that gives us an advantage, because the first adopter advantage is that if we are saying mid-tier, in a couple months, we can be able to put it over maybe 6 to 12 into an entry level. Whereas maybe other OEMs, you're only going to see that in about 2 years from now in terms of entry level.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, look, it's all about spectrum, and the government has released the spectrum, albeit until November, and I think that will become permanent. I think it's just a no-brainer. And as we discussed now, I mean, MTN has got 5G across some of the cities. Vodacom has launched a commercial version of 5G. I was testing both the networks. I mean, just down the road from me, I was plugged into the Vodacom network, and it's just the speed's unbelievable on both the networks.
Yeah.
Where do you see the growth of 5G in South Africa? I mean, will we get to, say, 60% or 70% in 3 years' time? Is it going to be a rapid growth like 3G and 4G, for example? Where do you see 5G in South Africa?
You know, we'd love to see a rapid growth like 3G and 4G, etc. But we, like you said, spectrum, we've been waiting for so long, and now we've been allocated emergency spectrum. Hopefully that continues. But again, we need in order for it to grow at that kind of rate, it needs to have collaboration between the network providers, collaboration between handset manufacturers, device manufacturers like ourselves, and then of course government at the same time. And like I mentioned, if it's only going to be isolated to just 5G rollout without proper use cases, then you're going to struggle to roll it out faster, because there's not going to be that investment and there's not going to be that focus to be
Right.
able to roll it out in that time. An example of that is if you look at 4G, because you mentioned previous technologies, let's take the United States as an example, and a
Yes.
lot of Europe. 4G and their rapid early adoption of 4G, because they passed those hurdles. This is what really, when we looked at the internet boom and the app boom and everything that took place from the time of the dawn of smartphones, the likes of Instagram and Uber and then the gig economy, this is what helped them to be able to move forward, because they had the base infrastructure to support that.
Right.
So as South Africa, if we want to be able to move forward, the economy forward, I think we need to be able to adopt the same kind of mentality and then support these things. But again, with a clear view of what we're trying to achieve and not just the pipe dream.
Yes.
You know, because it's really, really important to say, how do we make technology meaningful? If we look at our current situation, the unemployment rate was shocking prior to the lockdown and the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Now it's increasing even more rapidly, right? But if you look again at Europe, just the UK specifically, around 15% of their employed workforce or the population is in the gig economy. In the United States, it's going to hit about 40 to 43% by the end of this year. You know, so in lockdown now, we know how many people were unemployed, how many people are struggling.
True.
But can we encourage to say, what is your skill set? Are you able to provide your services without having a physical presence? Can you offer, whether it is CV writing services, whether we know now kids are learning from home, would you be able to offer tutoring services?
Mm.
Can you offer anything? What is your skill set? But encourage that kind of thinking rather than saying, well, you know what, we're helpless. And technology is able to empower that. Technology, and especially 5G specifically, is able to
Yes.
drive that forward. So I think there's huge economic benefit and there's huge general benefit for society.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, in order for that to speed up, we need support from every role player.
Yeah. So Akram, you know, I've done quite a few of these seminars, and just I love talking to people about their challenges, because this is all new to us, right? Working from home,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
know, a lot of things we didn't see coming, a lot of things we were unprepared for, but we've really grown pretty quickly to adapt to these changes. But you know, the reliance on technology and connectivity in particular has been a key role for many people working from home, and I think a lot of people didn't factor in, for example, you know, Netflix running at the same time, you know, being connected to your office, the kids doing their homeschooling. So there's so much happening right now. And I just think about 5G. It's not, you know, whether or not we must do 5G or not, we have to do it, because the demands that we're doing right now and how we're operating from home is really showing it. And I'm sure you've had similar experiences, and Huawei being one of those technology providers that has, you know, modems, you've got handsets, you've got routers. I mean, there's just a broad range of devices. Just talk to us about people working from home and the kinds of equipment that they're using. What's been your experience?
Yeah, I think we've seen the exact same trends that you spoke about. And, you know, human beings by nature, I think in general, and perhaps businesses and society, we tend to try to solve for today's problems
Yeah.
rather than look at solving for what's to come tomorrow. Yes, COVID-19 has given us a bit of a kick up the backside to move forward and to be able to adapt. And we now realize the importance of it. I mean, just working from home as a company, we never fathomed that this will even be possible. Let alone think, you know what, let's give people a little bit more flexibility. But
Yes.
now we are seeing the productivity. Similarly, I think consumers in general said, well, I've got enough bandwidth or connectivity at home to cover my Netflix streaming. But we didn't factor in what other use cases or needs we're going to have. And now with lockdown, it's forced us into that. So I think that adaptation has taken place. But again, when I said let's solve for tomorrow's problems, Aki, COVID is perhaps not going to go away anytime soon, or the result of it, and the damage it's caused. It's something we're going to live with for quite some time. And then all the effects of COVID, like the unemployment we've touched about, like the effects on our education system, on our economy, is going to be seen for years to come. Then what do we do? So if we are able to embrace, like you said, 5G has to happen. If we embrace technology, we start using this, we find different ways to be able to work, to earn an income, to earn a living, to be able to educate ourselves, then we are able to survive and be able to make a plan long term. So what we are seeing is happening, that people are becoming more conscious, more conscious of the world around us and how it functions, and saying, okay, let me really look at this and say, what can I do to be able to equip myself, to equip my children for the future and the uncertainty that comes along with that. And there we see where technology is playing a major, major role. Similarly, if you look at the mindset shift when it comes to e-commerce, South Africa's e-commerce ratio in comparison to retail was, I think, just over 1%. But after COVID, you're starting to see the likes of One Cart and Take a Lot post figures of 400, 500% increases, per quarter. It's insane. So the resistance also from a security perspective, maybe a trust factor, quality of service. Now that people have started to adopt that and embrace that change, it's not going to go away. I think it's going to go. So retail, and traditional retail needs to start adapting. So the world around us, I think, is going to look completely different, and it already has started. But one thing that I can say is really positive is that consumers and citizens in general have embraced that change, perhaps a bit resistant, but have embraced it now out of sheer necessity. And it's something that's going to help the industry move forward long term.
Yeah. I mean, what's the secret of the success of Huawei's routers? I mean, I look at it in my business. I look at one here. I'm looking at one up here. They're all over the place. So, I'm currently using LTE routers. I was testing a 5G router, but it's the de facto device to connect to the internet. So what makes Huawei's routers, and in particular 5G routers, so successful in the marketplace at the moment?
I think it boils down to experience, and engineering and research and development. You see, Huawei, most people identify with Huawei right now as the mobile phone manufacturer,
Yes.
with the best cameras and batteries. However, if you go back 5-10 years, Huawei was known as the dongle guys. We weren't even known for our mobile phones.
Yes.
We used to make the dongles that plug into your PCs for internet connectivity. So we started off in general telecommunications connectivity when it comes to routers, chipsets, equipment, dongles, etc. So that's where our core competence lies. So this is what established us. And then also remember that the network infrastructure that enables that connectivity is also built by Huawei. So the fact that Huawei services 1/3 of the world's population, no matter what brand of mobile phone you're using, every time you dial a number for that call to go through, there's an 80 to 90% chance that somewhere along that value chain you're using Huawei tech, even if it's not branded, somewhere along that line. So when it comes to core competence, I think that is what makes it stand out. And then when it comes specifically for 5G, over the last number of years, before it can be this next hot topic and everybody's talking about it, it's hyped up in marketing and media, Huawei has been spending huge amounts of money in terms of research and development, as well as in patents and licensing and IP, to be able to bring out the best technologies for 5th generation to the world. And that is why right now we have that, I think, quite a big dominance in terms of our market share of 5G globally.
No, it's actually fascinating. When I mean, last year and the year before, I visited your stand at the Mobile World Congress, and people just think, oh, you just put something up and it's faster and it's 5G, and it's such a complicated technology. There's aerials, there's different frequencies. It's going to be pointed in the right direction. I mean, the kind of innovation that goes, and I've been to your head office in Shenzhen, and to see all of this, and the amount of research and development that you guys spend is like astonishing. I just also want to touch on your mobile devices, if I may, and your 5G devices and your local network of local app developers, because that's been gaining some interesting traction. A lot of people developing apps for your specific app store. How's that been going?
That's actually been incredible over the last couple of months. And I say incredible because even ourselves, we did not expect this kind of response or success. Of course, being a late entrant, our competitors had over a decade to build up
Yes.
an ecosystem. Now we have great strength in our hardware capability, but ecosystem is something completely different. To be able to ensure the user experience is not compromised too much, but you're still offering services that consumers demand. So when we started building this, we thought about it and said, well, China is an example. We have not used Google services in China. Nobody does because of the restrictions there for many years. But Huawei is still able to offer an ecosystem of solutions. So
Yes.
if we have that experience, can we take that and replicate it? Unfortunately, it's not a one size fits all and it's not a copy and paste. So yes, we have the experience and we can turn the switch and put something on tomorrow.
Yeah.
But we want to provide African solutions to Africans' problems. So at the same time, while we want to be able to sell phones and have the latest features and applications, could we be able to provide that while still empowering local app developers, while still saying we take local companies and brands and let them box with the big multinationals overseas? Can we take our e-commerce guys and give them front space rather than international, or our
Yeah.
streaming services like Showmax and put them front and center? These are all the things we were looking at. And when we started talking about the strategy, we proposed to developers that it's not just uploading your application onto Huawei's app store called App Gallery, but we
Yes.
want to give you the opportunity for deep integration into the OS itself and the user interface. So when somebody wants to stream or somebody wants to make a payment, they don't have to download an application necessarily, but they can use it natively off the software that comes with it. And at the same time, we open up access to markets. We are in 170 countries. We have over 500 million monthly active users on HMS and App Gallery at the moment. So how do we bring that market to local businesses and developers? And it has worked so well, Aki, that in the last few months, already we have reached our total sales. And remember, we've only launched HMS phones in South Africa in May this year.
Yes.
And already and that is retail sales. We announced it a long time, but we started selling them to the public in May. And already HMS phones represent 40% of Huawei's total volumes in South Africa.
Wow. That's
And we
interesting.
are,
That's 40%
yeah,
of new sales in the Huawei brand are HMS enabled.
yes, without Google
That's
services. That's
amazing.
correct.
That's amazing.
And we are forecasted right now to achieve between 70 and 80% by December 2020. That is unheard of. So what it says to us is that HMS acceptance by South Africans has been incredible. And a lot had to do, of course, with the support from our partners, the consumers, the developer community. But another important fact is the service offering. How do we take care? Because if it's something new, surely the experience is going to change. And somewhere along the line, a consumer might not get 100% of what they are expecting. So we've upped our services, including under lockdown restrictions. We
Mm.
have 24/7 support, instant messaging via our service app on the phone, WhatsApp, etc. And our customer satisfaction rate right now is at 98% on HMS
That's
phones.
excellent. Well done. Well done.
So these are the things that's promoting the app gallery, and of course it translates into other areas. I mean, our
Yeah.
e-commerce platform, we just mentioned how e-commerce is growing in South Africa, but in the last quarter, Huawei's e-commerce platform has grown by 805%.
Wow.
That is sellout. So
Gee.
it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling.
So
But
what phone
we
are
are
you
grateful to
currently?
South Africa.
So what phone are you using at the moment, Akram?
So I have two phones. I'm using a GMS version and a HMS version. On the GMS side, I have the Mate 20 RS, the Porsche design,
Yes.
and I have the P40 Pro as well.
Yeah, that P40 Pro is just astonishing. I mean, the speed on that
Yeah.
phone and the camera is pretty insane as well. I mean, that's just been such a massive focus and you hear your customers when you ask them what's your favorite feature on the phone, they say the camera without a doubt. Do you have a current favorite feature on your phone?
Well, on the P40 Pro, I would also have to say the camera.
Yeah.
Um, that's most certainly true. Because I think, Huawei has built that up over the last couple of years, and we all love taking pictures and documenting our lives. So on a P40 Pro camera, but generally across Huawei phones, I think my favorite feature will be the Wi-Fi bridge function, especially with something that I picked up now under lockdown and working from home.
Mm.
So I've created a home office outside, which is about um, my little office is about 25 to 35 meters away from my main building. and being able to pick up the Wi-Fi signal that's in my house is a bit of a struggle. So I use my mobile phone to bridge the Wi-Fi signal from the main house to my home office. Uh, and that is something that has been absolutely incredible. I didn't need any other hardware to do that.
That's
You know,
incredible.
so I think right now that's something that stands out for me, because it even makes it possible for us to have this call right now.
Yeah, and Akram, just final question. I mean, we just touched on the P40 Pro, and we spoke about the P40 Lite. Those two 5G devices what's the customer reaction like? Are customers going in store and saying, "I want a 5G device"? Are people asking for it specifically, that they want a 5G device? What's it like in South Africa?
Yeah, so people are walking in and saying, "Well, we've heard about 5G. What 5G devices you had?" And I think you have available. And I think being an early adopter has made it quite easy for us, because we were one of only two that was available in South Africa
Yeah.
at that time. And then when we brought in, P40 Pro and P40, then it was two from Huawei and one from another only. And it's still like that. And now we have something in affordable range as well. So, consumers had that availability from Huawei, so they were adopting it. But yes, definitely people are coming in and asking for, firstly, it's still camera is number one that they need. But I want a 5G device, because it is, I think, all the narrative that's going around and the excitement around 5G. They want to be able to say, especially remember, 70% of smartphone sales in South Africa, or 70% of the value, rather, should I say, comes from the operators in postpaid.
Okay.
And so because of that, if I'm going to lock myself into a 2-year or a 36-month postpaid contract, I want to ensure that my device is future-proof. And that is why people are coming in and saying, "Well, I want a 5G phone," because then I know even within next year, I've got the latest technology available. So definitely the adoption is very positive.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that penetration of 5G grow in South Africa. And if anything, the speeds that I've experienced up to now is, I definitely want a 5G device in my life, and I've got one, and it's fantastic. And once you experience those kind of speeds, you realize how it's a life changer, it's a business changer, it's really a real game changer in our world. Akhram Mohamed, the Chief Technology Officer for Huawei Consumer Business Group in South Africa, thank you for joining us on What's Next, talking about 5G.
Thank you so much for having me, Aki. It's been an absolute pleasure.